have no idea how long it took me to find that. Lambton Worm, out of Sunderland. Danny, it must have been clear when you were born that there might be something slightly awry, let's put it that way. Tell us what it was. Tell us how your parents and you, as you became more sentient, dealt with it.
Oh, I must be honest, I don't remember exactly how it arose, but it was clear to my parents at a fairly early stage that physically, that I wasn't progressing as they had imagined. And again, all these stories that I'm telling, most of them are apocryphal. Some of them might be true. The story that my mother always told was that she took me along to a doctor. And remember, we're talking about very early in the war, and I've got cerebral palsy. And it was almost unknown, I think, at that time. And she took me into the doctor, and the doctor said, okay, I will examine him. You leave the room. Now, when she left the room, I was a few months, at most a year. I think I was under a year. Obviously, I cried. So he called her back after about 5 minutes. He said, look, there's nothing, he's just backward. So he was probably right. Anyway, my mother wasn't one to take that lying down, and she took me out and said, you know, we will get on with it. One has to remember that it was a very different time, that they knew nothing about, well, they don't know enormous about the condition now, but they certainly knew very, very little then. I mean, I remember I had a little bit of treatment. My ankles were in plaster at one time. Again, the apocryphal story, if you're interested in them, is that I had to go down to, you know, have plaster put on. And the nurse said to me, no, it sounds terrible. The nurse said to me, right, we're going down to the theatre. So you can imagine what I said. What is showing? Anyway, I had that on my ankles for about 3 months. And I sort of gradually progressed, and I began to move a lot better, and I was walking, and I started school, and I started at a mainstream school. And then something very interesting happened. The first week, I don't know whether it's still the case now, the first week when I was at school, a district nurse used to come in, or a school nurse, and examine you, see if you've got, you know, however many you need of everything, and that was it. And she said to me, oh, I'm not sure you should be at this school. I think you should be at a sunshine school.
No, what's a
I think a sunshine school, I think that was for disabled or handicapped children. So,
how old would you have been at this time, Danny?
5.
About 4
4
or
and a
5?
half, 5.
Just started school?
Yeah, just started school. So as we were, at that time, I used to go to school, my mother pushed me in a chair. And I'll never forget it, we were about 200 yards up from the school. She asked me what had happened, and I told her. She turned the chair around, and we went to see the nurse. And that nurse, I don't think, ever worked again. I carried on at the mainstream school. But I was fortunate in that I was able to cope quite well with the school.
Yeah.
I gradually got stronger.
How were schools equipped in those days to deal with
well, they're pretty poor today, but you can imagine what they were like then. I don't know, really. I mean, I know I went to the junior school a year early to save me going upstairs for the second or third year, whatever it was, at the infant school.
And from there you went to infant school, junior school, and then where did you go?
Then I went to the local grammar school.
And how did you cope there? Because obviously you were getting older.
Well, before that, I had a couple of operations, which improved me a great deal, and after those operations, I was able to, travel on public transport,
Yeah.
etc., on my own. I mean, I have to say that the staff on the buses were terrific.
Yeah.
They used to help me on and off, and by the time I went to the grammar school, it was just taken.
And
for
you met a
granted.
friend, you say?
I had a friend a lot earlier.
About 6 years old, you met a friend. Tell me about this.
When I was
friend.
about 6 years, we used to live on the main road by the station. I was sitting on the front step one morning, and a guy came along, and he started talking to me. It wasn't a Jewish area we lived in at that time. It was during the war, and this guy was called Danny Patterson, and he changed my life. He was fantastic in that he took me everywhere, football, cricket, school, everywhere, on his back. Now, I saw him about 30, 40 years later. I was sitting in Pages Lane, I'll never forget it. The phone rang, and this guy said, were you David Teacher from Sunderland? David, by the way, is my real name. I said, yes. He said, this is Danny Patterson. I said, what? He said, he went to South Africa many years earlier, and he came round. I saw him at the office, and he said to me, I've got to thank you. I said, you got to thank me? He said, yes. He said, I was always the strongest policeman in South Africa. For carrying you around on my back.
He made you walk further.
He made me walk.
Little by little.
Correct. He would sort of say, if I was here, he would be where Stephen is, and he'd say, right, walk to me, and if I couldn't do it, he'd come closer. And then I'd walk up it, and he'd go further away, and we'd do that. And we were extremely close. But after 2 or 3 years, he was 2 or 3 years older than me.
Right.
He left, and he went to grammar school. I largely lost touch with him after that. But he's one of the big memories of my life.
And you had a regular social life. You went to B'nai Akiva. You did everything that teenagers do.
I don't know what teenagers do.
In those days, Danny, not now.
Oh yeah, in those days. I had a reasonable social life. Remember, I was in Sunderland. There were comparatively few Jewish people, and we tended to socialise mostly within the community. I did get very involved with B'nai Akiva. And one of the reasons for that was I was a child of rock and roll, the rock and roll era, and everybody was dancing, trying whatever. But the one thing I couldn't do was I couldn't dance. Now the wonderful thing, as far as I was concerned, about B'nai Akiva, which is nothing like it is today, it was much more relaxed. But even in those days, there was no sort of mixed dancing and that kind of thing, and I became very involved with that movement.
Tell us about your second record, Danny.
My second
record.
My second. Now, this is a bit difficult because Lauren said to me before, "Where's your list of records?" And I said, "I don't need a list of records. I can remember." My second record is
Ian Drury.
My second record is Spasticus Autisticus by Ian Drury.
Enough said, let's hear it.
Spasticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, autisticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, autisticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, autisticus. I whittle when I piddle, cause my middle is a riddle. I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, autisticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, autisticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, autisticus. I dribble when I nibble and I quibble when I scribble. Hello to you out there in Norman land. You may not comprehend my tale or understand. As I go past your window, give me lucky looks. you never read my books. I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, artisticus. I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, artisticus. I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, I'm spasticus, artisticus. I'm nobbled on the cobbles 'cause I hobble when I wobble.